Hi again, everyone. You ready for a new story? I think I'll call this one Phishes for Byron. Fools are my theme. Let satire be my song. That quote comes from a poem by Lord Byron, named English Bards and Scotch Reviewers, which was first published anonymously in 1809. The fool reference is an allusion from this poem, which targeted certain reigning poets of his day. I rather like that line. I think it's fitting for the ongoing story of our two protagonists, Byron Sundry and Phish McDonish. Interestingly enough, this poem went through several subsequent editions, but ironically, Byron himself finally suppressed a later revision after coming to regret his earlier criticism of his fellow poet adversaries. Apparently, he came to no longer consider them fools at all. I think this account is useful for our ongoing and unfolding story. Might Byron's change of heart ultimately come to represent the future behavior of our loved shoopercop, old Phish? Or maybe even the main culprit, Byron Sundry himself? How apropos it would be for Byron to turn himself in after a similar feeling of regret. Or what about old Phish? What if he were to have a sudden moral epiphany and decide to apologize to our random tweeter and his flock of admirers? What if he were to suddenly find humility and recognize the error of his narcissistic ways? Maybe then, after all of this, he could emerge anew as an honest champion of victims and go on to do good and altruistic work. That would be rather poetic, don't you think? And it would end our story with a relatively happy ending, despite the horrible tragedy and drama which they both brought about themselves. There's even another way in which this metaphor could find significance here. Maybe I will be shown to be wrong, and even rash, for having treated old Phish the fool, and having chosen to defend the honor of our anonymous tweeter. That would put me in a rather awkward state now, wouldn't it? I would sure like to believe that if that were to come to pass, I would at least be big enough to apologize to all of you, but I suppose only time will tell. So until that time, I think I will adopt Byron's quote and continue to make fools my theme and satire my song. So tonight's story will introduce some new characters and YouTube true crime channels. If you followed this story until now, some of you at least, surely already know about two of Phish McDonish's greatest adversaries, the renowned investigative power couple, Mr. and Mrs. Shakira, and the evil villain, Benji. They run two of the best true crime channels on YouTube. Incoherent Babbling on Crack Under the Bridge, and Benji and his world-famous blood monkey fleas. In an odd twist, Benji is recently added to his channel portfolio by adding a page cleverly named after our random tweeter, the same exact name. This was seemingly done to troll old Phish in an effort to really get his goat. But in retaliation, old Phish posted a police mugshot of Benji on his Facebook page, and to this day has tried to blame the banning of the interview place entirely on Benji. So Mr. and Mrs. Shakira are famous for having befriended and defended Sean Welsh, until they didn't anymore, but sort of still do. Sean is the father of the poor missing girl Shummer, and a self-admitted serial SA perpetrator and a pedophile. The Shakiras have given him a regular platform on their show after Phish so rudely had a falling out with Sean. Mrs. Shakira was at least generous enough to let Sean come on her show and make the case for his innocence. He thinks his daughter was abducted from their home by some unknown stranger. And he claims that that whole SA story is a bit of an exaggeration, and he rather blames a 5-year-old girl of having initiated a romantic relationship with him when he was 12. He thinks it's rather unfair and that she's to blame. I mean, after all, she was 5. Mr. and Mrs. Shakira even let Sean share his biblical scripture to hundreds of adoring Sean and Shakira chatroom fans. They even prayed together on camera for everyone to see. It was lovely. But then Sean apparently may have gotten a bit inebriated during a live stream and possibly defecated during their live video chat, which may have offended certain chatroom sensibilities. Benji and Phish are currently in talks now to do a pay-per-view event in the cage to settle their differences, and are alleged to have negotiated an equal share of a $5 million pot donated by their respective cults of personality. The end.